On November 1974, a gruesome crime shocked the small town of Amityville, New York. Ronald DeFeo Jr., a 23-year-old man, methodically shot and killed his parents and 4 younger siblings as they slept in their family home at 112 Ocean Avenue. The crime was horrific, but what followed was even more chilling. During his trial, DeFeo claimed that voices in the house had compelled him to commit the murders, a statement that would later become central to the Hauntings legend. Just over a year later, in December 1975, George and Kathy Lutz purchased the house for what seemed like a bargain price of $80,000. The home, with its Dutch colonial style and picturesque location on the canal, seemed perfect for the young couple and their 3 children. However, their dream home quickly turned into a nightmare. On their very first night, George and Kathy reported an overwhelming sense of dread. This was just the beginning. Over the next 28 days, the family experienced a series of escalating paranormal phenomena that they could not explain. George, a former Marine and known skeptic, became irritable and withdrawn. He would wake up every night at 3:15 a.m., the approximate time the murders occurred, feeling an unshakable urge to check the boathouse. Kathy began having vivid nightmares about the murders, seeing the victims' faces and even sensing their pain. She claimed she was physically touched by an unseen force and at one point woke up to find red welts on her body. One night she saw her face in the mirror transform into that of an old hag. The children were not spared. Their youngest daughter, Missy, developed a strange friendship with an imaginary pig-like creature named Jody. Missy described Jody as having glowing red eyes, and George later claimed to have seen those same eyes staring at him through a window. The house itself seemed alive. Doors would slam shut on their own, foul odors would fill the rooms despite extensive cleaning, and green slime was reported oozing from the walls and keyholes. Cold spots appeared in various parts of the house, even though the heating system was functioning perfectly. Perhaps the most terrifying event was when George claimed to see Kathy levitating above their bed, her body twisting unnaturally as if she were being controlled by an external force. Unable to endure the relentless terror, the Lutz family fled the house on January 14, 1976, leaving behind all their belongings. They never returned. Their story gained widespread attention when Jay Anson published in 1977, based on the Lutz's accounts. The book became a bestseller, spawning numerous films and investigations. However, the story has been met with skepticism. Critics, including subsequent owners of the house, have reported no paranormal activity, leading some to accuse the Lutz family of fabricating their experiences for fame and profit. Still, certain elements remain difficult to dismiss. Paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren visited the house and claimed it was infested with malevolent spirits. A photograph taken during their investigation shows what appears to be a ghostly child peering out from one of the bedrooms, a room where one of the DeFeo children was killed. To this day, the Amityville house remains an enduring symbol of unexplained horror. Whether a hoax or a genuine encounter with the supernatural, the events at 112 Ocean Avenue have left an indelible mark on the world of the paranormal. The Enfield poltergeist case, which unfolded between 1977 and 1979, is one of the most documented and debated hauntings in history. It took place in a modest council house at 284 Green Street in Enfield, a suburb of London, and centered around the Hodgson family. Single mother Peggy Hodgson and her 4 children, Margaret, Janet, Johnny, and Billy. The events primarily focused on 11-year-old Janet and her 13-year-old sister, Margaret. The haunting began innocuously enough. On the night of August 30, 1977, Peggy heard strange knocking sounds coming from the walls of her daughter's bedroom. Initially, she assumed it was the children playing tricks, but the sounds grew louder and more persistent. The following night, furniture began to move on its own. Janet and Margaret screamed when their beds shook violently, as if lifted by an unseen force. Terrified, Peggy sought help from neighbors. One neighbor, upon entering the house, reportedly witnessed a chair slide across the floor unaided. The police were called, and an officer noted seeing a chair move several feet without any visible cause. Despite this, the police declared they could not assist with what they believed to be a supernatural matter. As the activity escalated, the family began hearing voices. One of the most chilling aspects of the case was the emergence of a guttural male voice which seemed to emanate from Janet. The voice claimed to belong to Bill Wilkins, a man who had died in the house years earlier. When asked for details, the voice described how he had suffered a brain hemorrhage while sitting in a chair in the living room. These details were later corroborated by Wilkins's son, adding an eerie layer of credibility to the claims. Investigators Maurice Gross and Guy Lyon Playfair, members of the Society for Psychical Research, spent months documenting the phenomena. They witnessed furniture levitating, toys flying across the room, and objects inexplicably bursting into flames. Janet herself was photographed levitating multiple times, appearing to be flung from her bed by an invisible force. Journalists and skeptics also visited the house, with some capturing unexplained phenomena on film. A BBC crew reportedly had their recording equipment destroyed under mysterious circumstances. Reporters from the Daily Mirror claimed to have seen marbles and Lego bricks flying through the air, often at dangerous speeds. Despite the overwhelming documentation, skeptics argued that the events were either exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Some pointed out inconsistencies in Janet's accounts, and suggested she and her sister might have staged the events for attention. Janet admitted to faking a few incidents but insisted that the majority of the activity was real and beyond her control. The strain of the haunting took a toll on the Hodgson family. Janet was frequently subjected to invasive tests by doctors and researchers who sought to determine whether her experiences were genuine or the result of psychological trauma. However, no conclusive evidence of deception was found, and the activity eventually subsided in 1979, leaving behind a family deeply scarred by their ordeal. The Enfield poltergeist remains one of the most controversial paranormal cases to date. While skeptics dismiss it as a hoax, believers argue that the sheer number of witnesses, including police officers, journalists, and researchers, makes it one of the most compelling hauntings in history. The case has inspired numerous books, documentaries, and films, including The Conjuring 2, ensuring its legacy as one of the most chilling tales of unexplained phenomena. The haunting of the Despard family home in Cheltenham, England, is one of the most thoroughly documented ghost stories of the Victorian era. Known as the Cheltenham Ghost, the case centered on sightings of a veiled woman in black who roamed the house and grounds of the Despard residence, known as Garden Reach. This haunting, which began in the early 1880s, spanned several years and was witnessed by multiple members of the family, visitors, and even neighbors. The Despard family moved into the property in 1882, unaware of its eerie reputation. Almost immediately, strange occurrences began. Family members would see a tall woman dressed in black, with a dark veil covering her face, wandering the halls and staircases of the house. The apparition was described as lifelike, but her movements were unnaturally silent. Witnesses reported that she seemed to glide rather than walk, often passing through closed doors and solid walls. The primary witness was Rosina Despard, the eldest daughter, who kept meticulous records of the events. Rosina reported seeing the ghost dozens of times, often late at night or in the early hours of the morning. The ghost would appear near the staircase or in the drawing room, standing still for several moments before vanishing into thin air. On one occasion, Rosina claimed the ghost approached her, and she felt an intense wave of sadness emanating from the figure. Other family members and guests also reported encounters with the veiled woman. Some described hearing soft, inexplicable footsteps when no one else was around. Others noted a sudden drop in temperature whenever the ghost appeared. Despite their fear, the Despard family attempted to coexist with the spirit, which seemed to harbor no malicious intent. Curiosity about the haunting grew, attracting the attention of the Society for Psychical Research, SPR, a group dedicated to investigating paranormal phenomena. The SPR sent investigators to document the case, making it one of the earliest hauntings to be studied scientifically. They interviewed witnesses, collected detailed accounts, and even spent nights in the house to observe the phenomena firsthand. Through their investigations, the SPR discovered that the veiled woman was believed to be the spirit of Miss Apperly, a former resident of Garden Reach, who had died under tragic circumstances. Local lore suggested that Miss Apperly had suffered a broken engagement and spent the rest of her life in seclusion, mourning her lost love. She was buried in a nearby cemetery, and some believed her restless spirit had returned to the house she once called home. The SPR's reports included consistent descriptions of the ghost's appearance and behavior, lending credibility to the accounts. They concluded that the haunting could not be easily dismissed as a fabrication or hallucination, given the number of witnesses and the recurring nature of the sightings. Despite their findings, skeptics argued that the haunting might have been the result of overactive imaginations or the power of suggestion. However, no rational explanation was ever found for the phenomena, and the case remains one of the most compelling hauntings in British history. The Despard family eventually moved out of Garden Reach, but the story of the Cheltenham ghost endures. It serves as a fascinating example of a haunting that bridges the gap between folklore and scientific inquiry, leaving us to ponder the mysteries of life, death, and the possibility of spirits lingering among us. The haunting of Doris Bither, also known as the Entity Case, is one of the most disturbing and well-documented cases of paranormal activity in modern history. It took place in 1974 in Culver City, California, and involved claims of violent physical assaults by unseen forces. The case has been studied by paranormal investigators and inspired the 1982 film, though the true events remain shrouded in mystery and fear. Doris Bither, a single mother of 4, lived in a small, dilapidated house that she described as oppressive and dark. Her life had been marked by trauma, including abusive relationships and struggles with alcohol. In desperation, she reached out to paranormal investigators Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor, who were conducting research at a local bookstore. She told them about terrifying incidents in her home, claiming she was being attacked by malevolent spirits. When Taff and Gaynor visited her home, they were immediately struck by the atmosphere. The house was cluttered, with a palpable sense of tension hanging in the air. Doris described being assaulted by 3 entities, 2 smaller, shadowy figures that restrained her while a larger, more aggressive entity physically attacked her. These attacks often occurred in front of her children, who corroborated her claims. Her teenage son, Brian, described witnessing his mother being thrown across the room by an invisible force. The investigators set up equipment to monitor the activity. Over several visits, they documented strange phenomena, including objects moving on their own, unexplainable cold spots, and strange lights appearing in the air. During one session, they captured a series of photographs that showed arcs of light and glowing orbs swirling around the room. One particularly chilling image appeared to show a misty, humanoid figure standing near Doris. The activity seemed to intensify whenever Doris was under emotional distress. Investigators speculated that her psychological state might be amplifying the phenomena. Taff and Gaynor theorized that Doris might be unconsciously generating the activity through psychokinesis, a form of energy projection linked to strong emotions. However, this theory did not account for the physical injuries she sustained, including bruises and scratches, which appeared after the alleged attacks. Neighbors and friends also reported strange occurrences. Some claimed to hear screams and loud crashes coming from the house when no one was home. Others saw shadowy figures moving through the windows. Despite these corroborating accounts, skeptics dismissed the case as a combination of Doris's troubled past and psychological issues. One of the most harrowing aspects of the case was its persistence. Doris moved to different homes in an attempt to escape the phenomena, but the attacks followed her. This led investigators to believe that the haunting was not tied to the house but to Doris herself. This phenomenon, known as a human agent haunting, is rare and poorly understood. The case eventually faded from public attention, and Doris passed away in 1995. To this day, the Doris Bither case remains one of the most debated and unsettling accounts of paranormal activity. The combination of physical evidence, eyewitness testimonies, and the extreme nature of the claims has left even skeptics questioning whether something truly unexplainable occurred. Whether a result of external entities, psychological trauma, or a mix of both, the case continues to haunt those who study it, leaving more questions than answers. The Bell Witch haunting is one of the most enduring and terrifying legends in American folklore, with its roots stretching back to the early 19th century in Adams, Tennessee. The haunting of the Bell family, which began in 1817, became a source of fear and fascination that still captivates people today. The case involves a malevolent spirit that terrorized the Bell family for years, culminating in the death of John Bell, the patriarch, and the belief that the entity was responsible for his demise. The Bell family, led by John Bell, had recently moved to their farm in the remote area of Adams. The family consisted of John, his wife Lucy, and their children, including the young Betsy Bell. They were a devout Christian family, well respected in the community, and their peaceful life on their new farm seemed ideal. However, their idyllic existence quickly turned into a nightmare when they began to experience strange, unexplained phenomena. The first sign of trouble came in 1817, when the family began hearing strange noises around their house. At first, the noises were thought to be nothing more than the sounds of animals or perhaps the wind, but the sounds quickly escalated. The Bell family reported hearing persistent knocking, scratching, and rattling noises, often coming from the walls or the doors. These sounds would occur at all hours of the day and night, making it impossible for the family to find peace. Soon, the disturbances became more violent and physical. Family members began to feel unseen hands grabbing and pulling at them. John Bell, in particular, experienced intense physical attacks. He reported feeling as though he were being choked or struck by invisible forces. His wife Lucy and their children were also affected, with some of them claiming to have been slapped, pinched, or even dragged across the floor by an unseen entity. The focus of the haunting seemed to be Betsy Bell, the youngest daughter. Betsy was subjected to the most violent and terrifying attacks. She would often be slapped, pinched, or struck with invisible blows. On several occasions, Betsy was even seen to levitate off the ground and be thrown across the room. The spirit would often speak directly to her, using a disembodied voice to taunt her and mock her. The voice, which became known as the Bell Witch, claimed to be the spirit of a woman named Kate Batts, a local neighbor who had a long-standing feud with the Bell family. As the haunting intensified, the Bell family sought help from neighbors and eventually from spiritual leaders in the area. Word of the strange events spread quickly, and soon the Bell farm became a local spectacle. People from surrounding towns visited the farm to witness the paranormal activity firsthand. Some reported seeing objects move without explanation, hearing the disembodied voice speak, or feeling an unnatural coldness in the air. The Bell Witch was said to be able to mimic the voices of family members and even strangers, leading to reports of conversations between the spirit and visitors. The most famous aspect of the Bell Witch haunting was the mysterious death of John Bell. Over the course of several months, John's health began to deteriorate rapidly. He suffered from seizures, paralysis, and an intense loss of energy. Doctors were baffled, unable to diagnose his condition, and some even believed that the spirit was somehow causing his illness. One night, as John Bell lay in bed, he reportedly told his wife that the Bell Witch had poisoned him. The next morning, he died. After John Bell's death, the activity reportedly ceased, and the Bell family was left in peace. However, the legend of the Bell Witch lived on. Local residents claimed that Kate Batts's spirit had exacted revenge on John Bell for some perceived wrongdoing, though no one could definitively say what that wrongdoing was. Some speculated that it was related to a land dispute or an earlier incident involving the Batts family, but the truth remains unclear. In the years following John Bell's death, the Bell Witch continued to be a subject of fascination. Stories of the haunting were passed down through generations, and the site of the Bell family farm became a place of pilgrimage for those interested in the paranormal. A cave near the farm, known as the Bell Witch Cave, is said to be a focal point of the haunting, and is now a popular tourist attraction. The Bell Witch haunting remains one of the most significant and chilling paranormal events in American history. It has inspired countless books, movies, and documentaries, including 2005 and 2004. While some skeptics dismiss the story as folklore or a hoax, the sheer number of witnesses and the strange, violent nature of the events have left many convinced that something truly supernatural occurred. To this day, the legend of the Bell Witch endures, with some believing that the spirit still lingers in the area, waiting for its next victim. If these bone-chilling stories sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Mr. Creepy for more spine-chilling content that will keep you up at night. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you never miss an eerie tale from the dark side. What do you think? Are these hauntings real, or is there a more logical explanation? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've had your own creepy encounter, share it with us. Who knows? It might just make it into our next video. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.